Hi everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about how to run an independent samples t-test using Excel. Now, if you all remember, an independent samples t-test is when we have two groups of participants. So we're comparing the average across the two groups on whatever our outcome variable is. Now, in this particular study, we randomly assigned our participants to one of two wordings, and these were actually Asian American participants, and we were seeing if the racist language that has been used in society affects their feelings of tolerance and respect in American society. And so you can see here, I'm just kind of making note of how I coded each of these values. And when we code something, we're giving that condition a number. That way we can actually analyze the data with it. So you can see here, actually column A is just the participant number in my data file. So 1 through, the total number of participants we have. Column B is actually telling me which condition that our participants are in. So you see these first 65 participants are in condition 0, which we know is the racist language condition. And then condition 1 is the COVID-19 language condition. And again, we're seeing, does the language of an informational flyer that we presented our Asian American participants with affect their feelings of tolerance and respect in American society? And this was part of a broader study that we did, but we're just going to take a look at this data here. So because my participants were in one and only one of these two groups, we're going to do an independent samples t-test. Now the first thing that you need to make sure that you have is this data analysis option. So we're going to come up here, so if we're clicking up here in the top ribbon, we're going to click on the data tab, and then we're going to click data analysis. Now if you don't have the data analysis option in your Excel spreadsheet, go ahead and watch the video that I will link to below. I'll actually have a pop-up here that'll show you how to do that. So we're going to click data analysis, and in this data analysis tab we're just going to find t-test. And there's two ways that we could do this. We could assume equal variances, or we could assume unequal variances. Now if you're really going to be analyzing data, if you're going to use the assuming equal variances, which is an assumption of students' t-test of the general linear model more broadly, then you need to actually test for that. Now, one of the things that I actually suggest to my students is running this assuming unequal variances. We don't even have to test. That test is more robust to violations of unequal variances or the equal variances assumption. And I'll be honest, I mean, if you do it this way, you don't really need to test for equal variances. So you might as well just do this every time, because it'll work even. This test, this assuming unequal variances, that's going to be Welch's t-test there. That's going to work regardless of whether they're equal or not. So you might as well just get in the habit of doing that one anyways. So if we hit OK, it's going to give us this dialog box, and here is where we tell the dialog box what data we are using. So variable 1, that's actually going to be condition 1. I know it's a little bit confusing there, but that's actually going to be condition 1. So I'm just going to click this little, so the button that I clicked is that one right there, and I'm going to select my data, and I'm going to select column C because that's my outcome variable, how much tolerance and respect the participants felt in American society. I'm going to select all of these ones that have a 0 next to them. So I'm just selecting, and I'm selecting only the ones with a 0. Now I made it easy. I sorted my column ahead of time. And by the way, if your columns are not sorted, all you gotta do is just right click on column B and do sort smallest to largest, and do make sure that it expands beyond just that column so that it keeps the rest of the data with that. So once you've kind of selected all of that data, we hit this little arrow. And then finally, 2, we're going to select all of the columns with a 1. So we're going to grab all of those data points with a 1 next to it, and then we're going to hit that. So now we've selected all of our data. Now your dialog box by default is not going to have anything in this hypothesized mean difference. Now, the hypothesized mean difference, what that's asking for is if the null hypothesis was not rejected by your data, what would the difference be? Now, the null hypothesis says that there's no difference between those two conditions, so we're going to actually put a 0 in there. And that's going to be that hypothesized mean difference. Most statistics that you're going to run are going to leave the alpha at 0.05, so your alpha level is going to stay at 0.05, and then you just need to tell it where you want to plug in that output. So I'm just going to select, just a few columns. You don't have to select the exact number, just give it a nice big area to put in that output range, and then we just hit OK. And then it's going to run that analysis for us. Now, I'm going to just make this easier to kind of get through. I'm going to actually limit the decimal points. So let's limit the decimal points to just 2 decimal places. That's fine. So the first thing that's going to do is it's going to tell us the mean of group 1, which again was the 0. So the mean of group 1, the racist language, was 3.88 on tolerance and respect, whereas the mean for COVID-19 condition was 4.11. So it does seem like participants are reporting a little bit more tolerance and respect in the COVID-19 condition than the racist language condition. It also tells us our variance there, which, by the way, if you wanted to get standard deviation, all you'd need to do is you take the square root of each of these. So let me just do that real quick. I'm going to do equals square root, and then I'm going to take the square root of that, because oftentimes when you're actually looking at results out, like if you're reporting the results, you'd want to report the standard deviation rather than the variance. And then I can just click and drag that over. So that's going to give me the standard deviation for group 1, standard deviation for group 2 there. It'll tell you how many observations there were. So I had 65 participants in group 1, which was the racist language. I had 77 participants in group 2, which was the COVID-19 language. My hypothesized mean difference is 0. Again, we already talked about that. There's 138 degrees of freedom there. And now on to the significance. Now I'm actually going to up the significance value 1 decimal place, because we always report our p-values to 3 decimal places. And we can see that my p-value, so you're seeing here, p with a two-tailed test. I'm going to run this as a two-tailed test. You can watch my other videos to see, what are situations that you might run a one-tailed test. That would just be, you'd run a one-tailed test if you had a specific prediction, which I did in this case. I thought that my participants would actually report a lower sense of tolerance and respect in the racist language condition than the COVID-19 condition. So technically I could run this as a one-tailed test where I'm specifying that group 1 is going to be less than group 2. So I could take that out. I could do it as a one-tailed t-test, but either way, here's your p-values. And we see that actually neither of those are significant, because a significant p-value would be less than 0.005. So this is how we run an independent samples t-test using Excel. If you do have any questions, what we found here was that this mean of 3.88 was not significantly different from the mean of 4.11, so we did not have a significant difference there. So if you have any questions, please leave them below. Otherwise, have a great rest of your day.